so long as they stay in power. Joining me now, Mollie Hemingway, editor-in-chief of The Federalist, and Charlie Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor. Both are Fox News contributors. Mollie, there's a lot of news to get through, but they really are ramping up this rhetoric. I mean, we actually have good data points on what's going to happen to energy and our personal freedoms if Biden gets 4 more years because of what he's saying. But they are saying democracy itself will end.
Yeah, they're saying democracy itself will end unless they are able to prevent Americans from voting for the candidate of their choice, which is a democratic principle. But they are willing to do anything, and The Atlantic is willing to do anything. During the first Trump presidency, they lied about Russia collusion. They participated in the Kavanaugh rape smear. They felt that these things were justified because of their hatred for Republican voters and the candidates they vote for.
Charlie, if democracy is truly on the line, again, as these people all suck up to China and they suck up to all these other despotic regimes, but if democracy is really on the line, gosh, you pretty much have to do anything to save democracy. It sounds almost like egging people on to conflict.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point, Laura, that has to be made here. That is exactly why they're using this very extreme language, because we are now at the point, as Mollie points out, they are so terrified of actual democracy that they're willing to put somebody in jail or take him off the ballot so that people cannot vote for the person that they want to vote for. And the only way you can justify doing that is if you call it some massive emergency that is an existential threat to the country and an existential threat to democracy as we know it, which is why, and of course, they have to talk about that because they can't talk about any of the issues, because on the issues, you cannot point to a single issue on which Democrats have the upper hand over conservatives or Republicans.
Now, and Mollie, speaking of this idea of egging people into conflict, Zelensky today comes to the UN, right? A whole entourage with him. And it seemed like he was trying to bait people into, more action. And he took a step further. Watch.
If Ukraine falls, Putin will surely go further. What will the United States of America do when Putin reaches the Baltic states, when he reaches the Polish border? He will. If the Russians reach Poland, what's next? A third world war?
Mollie.
Well, this is a really big issue for us right now. A lot of American voters, they do not believe that there should be endless spending on the war in Ukraine, particularly as Ukraine's own neighbors in Europe are not spending nearly as much as we are, not just a tiny fraction of what we are on this war. Americans want wars fought in our national interest. They want things brought to peaceful ends. They want to deal with the reality of the situation. And the reality includes that we have a tremendous amount of debt in our country, and we have a lot of things that we need to care about that we should be focused on as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Zelensky's visit goes this time around versus the previous.
Yeah, that was on 60 Minutes, obviously. Then, Charlie, you hear Biden and the Biden cabinet, when they talk about Ukraine, I've never seen them more passionate about anything except maybe climate change. Yeah. They're so passionate about Ukraine. I mean, they will pretty much do anything for Zelensky, much more than they would ever do to engage with conservative Republicans on the Hill. And I think that strikes people as odd when, obviously, he's happy to have our own border totally overrun with, 7.5 million people?
Exactly.
And counting?
Yeah, and of course, sadly, there are also some Republicans in that camp as well who get very, very spun up at the notion of spending more taxpayer dollars in Ukraine. But, of course, this is the Biden administration's war. The entire war occurred because of Joe Biden's reckless disregard for American energy independence, which jacked the price of fuel up and gave Vladimir Putin the money to invade a country that he never should have invaded. But so obviously Democrats are the number one cheerleaders for this. And as you point out, they really show their hand. Joe Biden was in New York City today and refused to even meet with a Democratic mayor, Eric Adams, who is struggling under the catastrophe of illegal immigration caused entirely by Joe Biden and his refusal to, or his willingness to throw open the gates at the border to invite in millions of new illegals.
Well, and Mollie, I think Charlie's point about the Republicans in the Senate, if it weren't for those votes of those, 14 or so Republicans in the Senate for this funding, a continued funding, extreme funding of Ukraine, this really wouldn't be happening. I mean, it would force the Democrats' hand in the House, who are kind of free to do whatever they want now.
Right, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has said that funding Ukraine is the Republican Party's foremost desire.
That's insane.
It's not true.
It's not true at all.
It's not true of American voters in general. It's particularly not true of Republican voters. And it speaks to this problem that we're having, that there's just a general lack of leadership in the Senate. It's true that they're the minority party. But Democrats, when they're the minority party, are actually able to get quite a bit done.
Schumer? Yeah.
Mitch McConnell has been unable to advance the Republican agenda. He's been unable to advance or articulate what that is, and it's causing problems for people in the House as well. The House is trying to work on a spending bill, and they have gotten no support from the Senate, who just want to spend. There's no difference in what what Mitch McConnell wants to spend and what Chuck Schumer wants to spend
on Ukraine.
That makes
it
very difficult to do an effective
And
battle.
Mollie Hemingway just made a fantastic point. And Charlie, this is something that I think Republicans are going to have to deal with. Right now, the leadership for the Republicans in the Senate is pretty much working against what the Republican electorate believes on key issues. China, trade with China, some stuff on immigration, maybe not the border issue specifically, and also, of course, with this never, ever, ever questioning what the Pentagon wants to do. That's a problem.
Yeah, and not to mention a huge swath of Democrat voters who aren't down for this stuff. And if Republicans took a principled stance in Washington on this issue and other issues, not only would they be doing the service of their own voters, but they would probably attract a lot of Democrat voters, too.
Well, that was Trump's magic approach to all of this, actually bring those working class people together for America first, our border, our country first. And before we can, what is it? Put your mask on first before you try to help others if the plane's going down. Mollie and Charlie, great to see you both. Thanks so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.